You and I can do it between the two of us.
Okay.
Yeah, and let me know how I can help. I'm here.
Yeah. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Kathy,
Jorge.
and thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Dominic Zerlo from the Department of Health. We are starting the meeting, of course, but we're letting people in the lobby. So we'll give it just a minute so that people can join on in. In the meantime, of course, we do have our information for the board and for contact information. If you have questions or if there's written comment or public comment that you want to make and don't get to do it during the meeting for any reason, whether it's not able to turn on your mic, or if you have think of something after the meeting, you can send it to our program website, which is medical.psilocybin@doh.nm.gov, and you can do that up until 5 o'clock on Monday, and then we will include that in the records for the meeting. Just as a reminder for everybody, it does take a few days, usually between 5 to 10 business days, for recordings and documents to be available on our website, but we will be posting both the recording of this meeting and the documents to the website. And I'll also use that as the reminder that this meeting is being recorded. So as a part of that, we do not have cameras on except for the organizers and the presenters. And part of the reason for that is so that we don't have any unexpected images in the background, which has unfortunately happened for not in our meetings, but in other meetings in other places. And so we have that. And as well, what we have discovered is when there are a lot of people on and we have people in some areas of the state where there is poor internet, if we have the cameras on for everybody, a lot of people end up losing some of their internet capability and keep dropping off and joining in. And we want to ensure people are able to at least participate as much as possible. So with that, I will turn it on over to the chair, who is Dan Jennings. So Dan, go on ahead and take it away.
Perfect. I really appreciate it. Dominic, thank you very much for having me here today, and I want to really appreciate all of y'all that have come on today on Friday to be on our first committee meeting here for the Research and Continuous Improvement Committee. Just to kind of do a little bit of housekeeping also for myself, I would love to, spend this first 20 minutes of our time here today with any kind of introductions. And first, I would love for the DOH team that's here to just kind of introduce. I mean, you've already met Dominic, and I would like for them to, if they would like to, introduce. And then during that time, if you would like to introduce yourself too, I would like you to get in the queue. Just use the raise hand feature that's there in your Teams view and go ahead and raise that if you'd like to introduce yourself. You can also use the chat feature to do so as well if your microphone may not be working. You'll be unmuted. Just let us know your name, your affiliation, where you're from, and just very short comment would be fine. We're going to do probably about 1 minute or so per introduction so we can kind of finish this up in the first 20-minute beat of this committee. So if you wouldn't mind, DOH team, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah. Hi, my name is Jorge Gonzalez. I'm the program manager for the Medical Psilocybin program.
Morning, everyone. My name is Kathy Adjeri, and I'm an IT project manager, and I support the Center for Medical Cannabis and Psilocybin with all of their IT-related projects.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brenda Martinez. I'm the Deputy Director at the Center for Medical Cannabis and Psilocybin. Glad to be here.
Great. And Jorge, if you'll go ahead and start unmuting. Thank you.
Sure. Brenda, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brenda Burgard. I am on the Advisory Board for Education and Training. I'm an LPCC, and I've been living here in New Mexico for many decades, so I'm really familiar with the culture, and I am actually a graduate of NMSU and UNM and the Southwestern College of Santa Fe.
Dan, your mic has been unmuted. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, it's been an honor to be able to speak at some of these different events. My name is Daniel. I'm from the wonderful state of Oregon. the licensed psilocybin testing laboratory out here. And I just feel like with 3 years in the legal market of testing, and previous to that, I'm a cannabis laboratory, but we're also a full environmental laboratory. I'm a little bit of an activist, and I'm just trying to help you guys with any questions you have from somebody that's been in the industry for a while.
Gregory, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning. It's cold and snowy. My name is Gregory Evans. I'm an independent researcher. The core of my work related to researching continuous improvement is using HPLC and mass spec to normalize a PCN analysis of biomass so that we can establish unified dosing, and then through that leverage full alkaloid profiles that could be specifically targeted for unique therapies, whereas somebody with PTSD may respond better to one chemotype rather than somebody with treatment-resistant depression, or somebody having acute anxiety may respond to a different chemical profile.
Kate, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning. I'm Kate Hawk. I'm in Santa Fe. I'm going to as many of these meetings as possible. It's this incredible process. I've been a trauma therapist for 40 years. I've been involved professionally with psychedelics since the 1980s in all kinds of different ways. And I'm interested in research. I'm doing really focusing on death and dying and expanded states of consciousness. I'm doing a research project surveying the whole scene in that field. Now there's a lot happening. And also host the Santa Fe Psychedelic Society meetings here. Just really happy to be with you this morning. Thanks.
James, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Dan, hello, and everybody, and Dominic. My name is James Brown. I have a doctorate in pharmacy from the University of New Mexico here. I have a very extensive network and background in psychedelics as well as psilocybin and psilocin. I've been trained in Oregon underneath their program, and so I'm very excited to bring that to this team. I'm really just excited to see us look at this research. I think this is a very important committee. This is a huge background. We need to look at so many important things, and these core elements of data collection is going to be very big. And I know Dan's over that, and so am I. And I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to our guidelines and what we can recommend as a group. And that's why I'm here today, is to be that advocate, but also to share what I know, and just to make sure we're all safe and we have those harm reductions and we have what we need to make New Mexicans have access to this, but also are safe using it. So hope everybody's having a great, safe, warm day. Take care.
Denali, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I'm grateful to chair and to the department. I'm a little bit sick this morning, so sorry for that. My name's Denali. I am the Director of Strategic Support for New Mexico for the Healing Advocacy Fund, which is a nonprofit that supports state-regulated access to psychedelic healing, and with a specific focus on ensuring accessibility, affordability, and equity in those programs. And I'm based in Las Cruces, where I grew up and where my family lives, and just really grateful to the committee and eager to be a support however we need. But I'm especially excited to hear the chair walk us through the scope of this committee and what your goals and hopes are. So we'll be listening attentively.
Catherine, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Hello and good morning. My name is Catherine Warnock. I am a licensed professional counselor in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I've been doing psilocybin-assisted therapy work for a few years. I'm very excited about this program. I'm excited about this subcommittee. I'm here mostly, like Denali, to listen, to offer, any of my expertise if it's relevant. Otherwise, I'm just grateful that we're all here. Thank you, everybody, for your time and effort on this project.
James, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is James, and I'm from Arizona, and I'm associated with the Arizona Department of Health Services, and I've been assisting with psychedelic and psychoactive related clinical trials. I went to grad school at the UW Madison School of Pharmacy, where I got my pharmaceutical sciences degree with an emphasis in psychoactive substances. I think that this committee is absolutely incredible. Continuous improvement and research is pivotal. And I think we can all agree that access is very important. But in order to obtain access, we need data and we need to be able to be harm reductionists as a team. So I'm really excited to learn from everybody. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Shane, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, my name is Shane McDaniel. I'm a fifth generation New Mexican. My family homesteaded here in eastern New Mexico before we were even a state. I'm a psychedelic assisted therapy integration coach. I'm also an amateur mycologist. I have experience with a lot of the equipment necessary to do the testing. I worked in the semiconductor industry, and I used chromatography a lot in the semiconductor industry at Intel and Rio Rancho. I'm also recently healed from a bunch of different mental health issues from Ibogaine. I went down to Ambio in Mexico and received that. And part of that process was it gave me a passion to not only find out about psychedelic medicines and therapies, but to make it my life mission to help others receive the healing that I was able to receive. And I'm just so grateful for all of you and the state of New Mexico for taking up this effort. And I just can't wait to get this going. And again, thank you to all of you guys. And one other quick thing is I don't have access to the chat. It won't let me enter chat. So if there's somebody that can tell me how to fix that, it just says I need to join the meeting, and I'm in the meeting. So
Shane, not sure on that, but we're going to be reading the important messages in the chat verbally. So
well, I can read the chat. I can read the chat. I just can't I just can't enter, like I can't make an entry.
Oh, yeah. Again,
I'll look into that, Dominic.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, guys.
Desva, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, today I'm Desva, and I am a part of the Psilocybin Advisory Board. Just hanging out, listening with y'all. Thank you.
And with that, we do have an introduction in the chat from Tessa Capel, and it says, "Good morning, everyone. I am Tessa Capel with a PhD in experimental psychology, worked with Larry Lehman on psychedelic research, and love to contribute to the research committee. We also have a few resources included by Dan Hewson, and thank you." And Denali says, "Congratulations, Shane. So glad you had the healing experience." So with that, is there anyone else for introductions?
Yep. Oh, there's one more. Yep.
All right. Thank you, Jorge.
Ben, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ben Edwards, and I work in soil mycology and have done soil restoration for 3 decades and have had a relationship with psilocybin and indigenous ceremonies for most of my life.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, for the introductions. I see no other hands up for introductions, so I really appreciate all of you being here today and sharing your story and why you're here. Dominic, if you wouldn't mind, we can go right on into the first slide of the presentation. And just to let everybody know that as we go through this, this is the first beat that we'll probably do with the subcommittees that we'll be running will be first 20 minutes will be for introduction purposes. So I appreciate everybody being able to do that. I do want to kind of use also this time to just remind kind of what our purpose and responsibilities are for this specific subcommittee. The idea is that this subcommittee is to ensure that provider preparation and research activities, harm reduction, and program evaluation for that medical psilocybin program services grounded in scientific evidence, ethical standards, and continuous quality improvement principles. So that's kind of the key mission for us to exist. I do want to also put out that if you're interested in, if you're very specific into other committee actions, meaning that if you're interested in like what dosage would look like, if you're interested in what patient qualifications would look like, if you're interested in cultivation, those kind of things, equity, please know that there are separate committees for those activities. So this committee doesn't take the responsibility away from those committees. This is a committee that we're going to focus on these kind of things, the responsibilities that we've set up for these core. And I would love, as we go through this, if you're like, hey, I think that we need to modify scope or clarify scope or anything like that, I'm very interested in hearing about that as well. But these are kind of where we wanted to kind of start with, just to kind of see where we can like launch from. So the responsibilities that we'll be talking about kind of first are core data elements that we would need to look at from a research and evaluation standpoint from the patient and provider perspective. Outcome monitoring, including adverse event reporting standards, ethical research practices, and evaluation frameworks. And then also this subcommittee, we would like to focus on the harm reduction and quality improvement practices that will go through this program, including risk screening, medication interaction guidance, emergency preparedness and crisis response, the informed consent and patient education materials, and that would also go into the community when it comes to this kind of harm reduction, and then mechanisms for updating the standards as new evidence emerges. So that's kind of the focus that we're going to be looking at to get started. And again, if anybody is like, hey, I think you've missed the point, you've missed the mark, you've added too much, or this is something that we don't need to get involved with, I would love, of course, to hear that feedback as well. But that's kind of where we can start. We can add a list of things as we go, but this is kind of where we wanted to start with on a core. So for our next kind of beat for this committee, I did want to set up some kind of core norms that we would follow. I know that a lot of other committees call them bylaws, and we can formalize them into a bylaw structure if necessary. But for a first meeting, I really just wanted in this next 20-minute beat to talk about what the core norms that we want to focus on in this group. And I would like for everybody that's part of this committee today to be able to share what you're thinking about what kind of core norms we would need to have. There's a couple of ways that I would like to do it. It's a little easier if you do type it into the chat box, because then it's easy for me to kind of copy and paste that as we go, because they're put in your words. I don't like to take what you say and try to summarize it sometimes and something I might miss. So if you do have some time and ability, and if you're not able to, that's fine. We'll work together on opening up the microphone for you. But if you can, type into the chat box a norm that you would like this group to focus on. And like I said, we'll spend this next 20 minutes doing that. If you, as you're seeing those norms come across in the chat box, if you're like, that's something that we need to focus on and I really want to put my vote behind it, just use your little reaction bubbles that are on that chat message. You'll see it whenever you see the thumbs up or the heart emoji or anything like that. And that way we know that, hey, we're kind of hitting that norm is resounding with a lot of people. And again, if you're like, nope, that norm doesn't work for me, I don't want to, or I want to elaborate on it, raise your hand, let's unmute you and share a little bit more. So again, if you can chat, great. And if you can vote using that, great. And if you can't, let's go ahead and raise hands and get that out in voice form. So we'll spend the next 20 minutes here until about 9:40 working on that activity just first.
And Dan, just to be consistent, we did have one other individual who introduced themselves in the chat. So that was Meredith McBranch, who says she's a psychology student interested in pursuing a graduate degree in clinical psychology and PAT, and especially interested in the research side of it. Also, we did figure out that one of the things that sometimes does happen if people are not able to utilize the chat and be able to get into there is if they are using a link that was forwarded to them rather than going through the link that they had through the registration. And so if you have that issue, let us know and we will see what we can do. But that's part of why we do need to have everybody register and use the links that they sent for the registration. And we will do our best to be able to help with that. So thank you. And back to you, Dan, and of course, people who thinking about what the norms are.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat box, so I'll go ahead and if it might be easier for people, just raise your hand if you wanted to share a norm that you wanted this group to focus on. And a lot of other groups have used norms such as the committee voting, how that might look before we would take something from this committee and move it forward into the board as a whole. Other norms or part of what bylaws have been are the qualifications of who can actually make those votes, that they would have to be a resident in Mexico. These are some of the things that we wanted to kind of focus on. First question, James Brown brought up in the chat, meeting timeline every 2 weeks. My intentionality is to be able to schedule this in such a way that it's regular and expected. Every 2 weeks is what I would hope, but that will also, we'll have to revolve around other groups so that I don't want to have our group at the same time as somebody else's group, so you can't go to both of them. And also our board will be meeting. So at this point, I would like to see if we could do the 23rd at the same time of January, so we could kind of keep on that cycle. But we'll be able to put that update out as we kind of go. But that's my intentionality, and then we can start to put it onto the schedule as a regularly occurring event for you.
Dan, we do have one hand up.
Perfect, thank you.
Dan Houston, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Hello there. I'm here today from Oregon because I just love research. I love some of the information that we have found out here in Oregon by doing little experiments at the laboratory. I just really feel like there's a portion of science / experiments that needs to be more readily available, information more readily available to people. And I just want to make sure that people there understand, difference between psilocybin and psilocin, and also just different things like here in Oregon, after a lot of this research, the way consumers have been consuming the product have changed dramatically. And what started this was, I feel like we're doing myth busting type stuff when it comes to this research. And in a group of people, it'd be almost interesting to see in this group of people, if that hasn't seen my research, to see a show of hands, type of situation, like how many people believe it's better to boil your tea when you're making psilocybin, or it's not, stuff like that. So I just wanted to say that a lot of the research I posted helps therapy assistance when you're trying to dose people, especially understanding psilocybin and psilocin and the difference between the two.
Thank you, Dan. I have a quick question. Did you have anything that you want to contribute to the norms of the group, how we might be able to interact?
I've been trying to think about that, and I'm a little bit puzzled.
No worries.
Keep thinking about it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I do have some information in the chat there that I'll share as well. Kate Hawk, it said open to input from everyone, but stay on topic and voting by New Mexico residents. So we have kind of two kind of norms so far that have been bubbled up from that. Again, if anybody else has other norms of how we should interact in this group as we move forward in other meetings, I would love to hear that as well. And I see a hand from Gregory Evans.
Gregory, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Hey, Dan, I'm having trouble kind of putting the thoughts into words. But what I really want to see in this committee and others is we have a lot of really intelligent people that have a lot of resources. And between the meetings, I think we should be doing work. And like, how are we going to like decide the work that needs to be done? Who does the work? How do we track that and bring it back to the committee for reporting and community like peer review?
I like that. It absolutely makes perfect sense. I'm going to summarize it myself as homework, but no, I'm not to minimize that. But exactly, this is kind of the whole thing: is that we want to have a way that between meetings there is going to be something. And I hope that at the end of today's meeting, I do leave you with, dare I say again, the word homework, but some things to basically take away from this meeting and to come back, because I did start with some information to share with y'all, but I would like to have this. I don't know. I know that in a 2-hour meeting, it's too hard to just see something on the screen and then say, okay, I can give you, clarification or information or vote thumbs up or down or something like that. But I do want to, at every meeting, to say, here's kind of the unresolved work we need to do and then what we can do to move forward. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's a very key point.
And Dan, we have a couple of other items in the chat from James Brown. Literature research broken down into areas, primary, secondary, tertiary, and include all 3 types with focus on the primary. Greg, of course, saying, give me all the homework. Denali, in addition to voting being restricted to Mexico residents, a conflict of interest and media clause of some kind would also be valuable. And then, of course, James, I love the amazing people on this committee with the different states involved, and see all members have a vote on the committee.
I'm just kind of keeping some notes here as I go on this one, so that way, that's my homework, is to kind of take the norms that y'all are bubbling up and to say, great, now let's put this together into something that we can go forward with. Because like I said, at this meeting today, we're not going to exit the end of the 2 hours and say, great, I've got something to take to the rest of the board and we're going to vote on it. So today is essentially just a way to kind of share some information that I've gathered so far, to give us something to chew on, if you will, and then to see if we're heading in the right direction. As I'm sharing this, I want to hear directly from y'all on those things. So, and any others that might come up now at this, because I don't want to belabor a point if we've already kind of shared everything, and we can move on to the next beat, which would be kind of our bulk here. I'm going to make one more kind of announcement on this, is that, and Dominic, you can put that slide back up that has the email address for us as well. Because again, just kind of like what Gregory had said, was like, hey, I need to be able to kind of share information between meetings. This email address is the best one to use, meaning share everything from this email address. What I would love for y'all to do is, if you do send something and it is dedicated for this committee, just make sure you put something about like research and continuous improvement, or something that kind of shows that it's going to go to this committee, so that I get it forwarded to me. So if you think of things after this meeting, anything, please share it to that email address. So and actually, yes, the idea that I'm trying to do is to get those agendas, as we're going to have these meetings, published on that. So, and I like the idea that Gregory's putting into the chat here about this, about the agenda published 24 hours ahead, and the task priorities and backlog tracking, so that we can kind of say, here's the things that we've worked on, but we haven't resolved yet. So thank you.
And we have a couple of more comments in the chat, and I can read from Kate Hawk. Definitely appreciate expertise from other states. Maybe have certain people as committee members versus anyone listening, ? Other committees have had various ways of identifying who votes. And then Dominic entered the email address for you to send your comments if you have others. That's in the chat as well, the program website and the advisory board website. And then Gregory Evans also added, I'll suggest RACI as a solid acronym.
I like the acronym. Thank you. Yeah, it makes it a little bit easier instead of, I meant, we'll just have to be careful. We'll use a lot of acronyms, I'm sure, in this, but this is a good way to kind of, instead of the mouthful of research and continuous improvement. So, so thanks for the thumbs up on that one too, or put that out. So again, we'll kind of have this amount of time dedicated for this at the top to talk about norms and to recenter back on norms again when we come back again to another meeting. But if you have any thoughts that you have in the meantime, please send them to that email address. And so now we'll kind of move into a little bit of the bulk of the presentation that I had for you today. And what I've been doing is kind of gathering myself up some of the best practices and research that I found out there to kind of go back to what Dan had said in the chat about focusing on primary research first. As much as I've tried to do, I have tried to find some primary research information for you. Now, you don't have to write all this down or take snapshots because this will be posted at the end of the cycles of meetings that we've had. So don't worry about it. You'll be able to access this as a handout whenever the DOH team has this posted up on the page, the psilocybin page. So you can find this later. But that way, kind of the homework is take a look at some of the research that I have found. And I would love for hearing your feedback from the research. So we'll bring some of that feedback back to the next meeting to say, this is something that we should keep. This is something that we should question or take off. These are some research that I've missed, I've had a blind spot on, so that should be added to it. So I'm going to show you just a few slides of the research that I found. The first one that I would love to really focus on is as we move through this entire system from start to finish, and we start to actually get the medical psilocybin program started up, I feel it's very important as we work on continuous quality improvement that we have a mechanism in where we can kind of gather people together and in a way to kind of share the researches and best practices and such and kind of grow the community. I'm going to just make a kind of a pitch there for Project Echo. I've worked with them many years, and Project Echo is an amazing tool to kind of get the diffusion of information into communities and build best practices and bring those things back. So I just, again, as we're doing this, this is something that I would like to make sure that people, that we have some tools that we can utilize. And Project Echo is a homegrown program as well. So it's just something that we might look at as a potential for this to get practitioners, growers, facilitators, etc., into something where they have ongoing best practice dissemination. Then I've got a few other links here for some information about clinical outcomes and such on this page. If you'll go on to the next page, I've got a few more slides. So again, I'm not going to belabor the points of all of these. You'll be able to read them. As Dominic said, it could take between 5 to 10 business days to get these posted, but I would love for y'all to be able to look at them, take a look at them, and come back and give me some feedback on what you think. And if Dominic might go to the next slide there.
We also have a couple of comments in the chat.
Okay.
You want me
Sure,
to read
go right
those?
ahead.
Okay. Denali had to step away, but she'll be back at 10 o'clock, back shortly. Catherine Warnock, I'm grateful for input from other states, but do feel it's important that New Mexico folks make the final decisions. I will have to leave on the hour, but we'll be watching the recording to see what I missed. And then Dominic wrote, please remember it will take between 5 to 10 business days to have documents and videos posted.
Great.
And my apologies on the delay, Dan, as is usual with virtual. No, the system decided as I tried to switch things to make me sign back into our system. So it took me an extra minute, but I'm back in. I could hear everything. I just couldn't actually do any functions. So
that's okay.
Thank you,
so
everybody.
If anybody is having any technical problems with Teams, don't forget that we are all having some problems sometimes too. So these are some regulations that I gathered from around the US and including in Canada. The Alberta health government system there has utilized psilocybin as a tool as well and has a permission granting system. So I put some links here that to take a look at as well. The next slide, please. Then when we talk about code of ethics and equity, I gathered a few tools that I found throughout as well, including APPA's code of ethics to take a look at, and some of the ethical code that was built in the Colorado model, as well as Alberta's incident reporting guidelines as a way to kind of take a look at when to submit critical incidents or just a duty to notify. There's also Oregon's Code of Ethics, Bill of Rights for the clients. And then there was Indigenous Communities Working Group report that came out of the Colorado group that I really thought was kind of important to review and to come from. Next slide, please. Then when it comes to some of the information for patients and risk screening informed consent, so there's Client Services Guide, which really it gives a lot of the details. So we can look at this as a model. We can see if we wanted to build upon that if for New Mexico. Same thing with client intake form. And then a couple of things that I wanted to kind of hit on, the risk screening, because there have been some contraindications when it comes to psilocybin. So I know that that's coming up in other groups when it comes to dosing and patient qualifications and such. But if we want to make sure that we have all the research to kind of back some of those things up, I wanted to gather a few. So a few things that there are, there's a mood disorders questionnaire that is a possibility. Psilocybin interaction checker, which is, I believe, a paid site, but again, it's just a tool to take a look at for us. There's also the Columbia Suicide Scale and the mood disorder question. I think I just put it in there twice there, unfortunately. But so this is something that we would look at as maybe potential like warning signs for a patient that would be interested in moving into the medical psilocybin. The next page, please. And then when it comes to making sure that we're tracking and being efficient and effective with the medical program, there's a few things that we could look at as self-reported scales for patients, including depression scales. There's a couple of different tools. Most of these are self-reporting tools, but this would be a way to kind of track ongoing interaction, follow-up, integration to see if it is finding improvement with somebody with drug-resistant depression. Then there's the PTSD checklist, the PCL-5. For end of life, there's a GAD, general anxiety disorder survey as well. And then for the for somebody who's on medical psilocybin for substance abuse, then there are other tools such as the timeline follow back tool to take a look at to see if there is lessening substance use. And then a couple of different tools that I was interested in looking at to see if the effect of psilocybin has actually been a dose that triggered a mystical experience or brings a challenging experience. So there are two vetted tools out there, the MEQ and the CEQ for those two things. And then there's also adverse events. So for adverse events, there's already a standard classification criteria, the CTCAC, that's used a lot for clinical trials, especially in cancer treatment, and is exhaustive of all of the different adverse effects and a rating scale across each one of those as well. Next slide, please. And then I believe is our last slide for the research. And so to look at harm reduction education, some of the things that we've heard from the field were that there needs to be training for EMS, law enforcement, and mental health professionals. MAPS has done a wonderful job of creating training modules. As a matter of fact, they are no charge. And so I wanted to bring those up to kind of show this could be a tool that could be utilized in this. There's also fact sheets on psilocybin assisted therapy. And then the last one is kind of a short guide for navigating post-psychedelic difficulties that could be a client-focused link. So just again, this part, I just wanted to kind of share, this is some of the background research that I tried to do to prepare for this committee to kind of share with everybody. Again, right now, I know you're thinking like, oh, there's thousands of other things that I would love to add to this list, or I would like to take a look at these links. And so I would let you know, this will be posted again after this meeting. Again, 5 to 10 days, please, keep an eye out for those announcements, and then you could take a look at them. But in the meantime, the kind of homework there would be, I would love for y'all to share through the email link, the email address for Medical Psilocybin, any other tools or research or anything that you want to be directed to the RACI committee. And so that way we capture it. A lot of times it's hard to capture it right in the chat box, but if you do send it through the email address, then we'll definitely have a record of it getting to us. So that's where I'm going to take a pause and just kind of open this back up for everybody else to kind of be able to share. Open up your mics if you need to, raise your hands and such.
Okay, and James, we do have, or I'm sorry, Dan, we have James Hasobe has actually included in the chat an external resource for drug science, independent evidence-based organization founded by Dr. David Nutt, and then has the link there. And then James Brown has posted, as we read through the various information, remind everyone on the bias and motivation for each one. And that's actually a great reminder whenever reading any kind of research or checklists or items like that.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to kind of share this, is because I would love to hear from people that are experts in the field to be able to come back, push back against any of these and say, this should not be included because of this reason, or if there's any other information that you would like to share because of that. So again, you don't have to, if there is certain information you'd like to share and you're like, I don't want to put that publicly, you can always share it through that email link as well, and we will include it in our considerations of the committee too. So that's why for this moment, I just wanted to kind of share some of the research that I have been finding, and then just as a starting point. So again, we can add, eliminate, edit, put notes on, and such like that from there. Any other comments or thoughts from the committee? A question out of the chat from Gregory Evans. Do we have any conversation developing around grant funded or private research programs that could emerge in the state? And is there a type of involvement this committee will have around that? That part of the scope is something that I would like to have further conversations around, especially with the rest of the board and the DOH staff on this. So that is a valid one. And that's on at the end of this presentation. I do have that as kind of a future thought to think about. So thank you. Okay, and I'll just kind of, as a former educator, I always do wait time. So I always like to just pause for a little bit, because sometimes it takes sometimes to type in the chat or to, get thoughts together. So forgive me while I just pause for just a moment here for that reason. And you could still think about this and comment on this, but I'd love to move on to our next part that I'd like to share with you, and that is some of the data collection system. And so, Dominic, if you might go to the next slide. And so this, forgive me for sometimes geeking out, but this has been my life for the last 20 some odd years, is creating data tools. I spent about 28 years in public education doing student reporting, creating databases and such. So this is something that I've really thought about a lot. Again, this is very rudimentary. I call it very drafty, but it's something that I, again, wanted to put out as a way for us to chew on. And so since everybody's here and being able to see this, it gives me the chance to kind of explain what my thought process was this, and then hear back from the field about things where I've been blind and haven't thought about certain things, or things that we need to consider or add or consider removing. So the first set of fields would be something I feel in data collection would be just the demographics and some of the social determinants. So as we're looking to create data collection systems, first one, patient identifier, it's some form of an anonymous unique ID for this individual, the date of birth, sex at birth, gender identity, and race ethnicity, as well as this kind of information will help us to find equity. Some of them I've explained in there too, is that their biological sex does affect some of the pharmacokinetics of psilocybin. So just some of the ideas that we wanted to have in here of, are we hitting the mark in this program, and not making sure that we're not excluding groups, whereas we're collecting that information. Then household income, of course, if we're looking at equity fund issues, this will help us with that area. Veteran status and zip codes, so that we could find, are we hitting urban and versus rural. Next slide, please. Then some of the baseline and history. So already recommendations are coming forward for the patient qualifications, and there are 4 that are codified in law. And so ICD-9 code, or ICD-10 code, excuse me, I'm way off. ICD-10 codes, yeah. I grew up on HCFA 1500 forms, so if you can remember that, congratulations. But on these ICD-10 codes, this would allow us to track, is this disorder related to one of those 4? Diagnosis duration, especially when we're looking at acute, chronic, or treatment-resistant conditions. The treatment history, because in treatment-resistant depression, usually it's the failure of 2 or more different antidepressant protocols. And then concomitant meds, which would be if there's any kind of medications that the patient might be on that would have some contraindication or interactions, and baseline severity. So again, going back to the research that I was sharing about some of those tools, then there could be a scaled score that we could use as a baseline then for the interactions and the integration. Next slide, please. For session logistics, this would be the data elements that would be for the actual session. And so there would be one-to-many relationship. There would be many sessions for an individual. Going back to the patient identifier, the date of the session, tracking of facilitator license, the product lot, so we can track the product, the dosage, and I would love to hear everybody's thoughts on this as we talk a little bit more about it. But I feel that it looks a little bit more towards the actual dosing of the molecule, not just the biomass itself. The administration mode of the session. So was it done in an individual or a multitude of, like, a group session? Setting type where this was done. The MEQ. So this is, again, going back to those mystical experience questionnaire and the challenging experience questionnaire. These are self-reported from the individual that's experiencing the psychedelic treatment. And so having this kind of number to see, like, was this dosing of the mystical experience quotient high, or did this individual have challenging experiences on this? I did see a hand up, so I want to take a breath here, because thank you all for kind of commenting now.
Jane, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Yeah, regarding dosage, I know from my experience in Oregon that the rule there is 5 milligrams or 5 grams, is the maximum dose allowed under the state law. And that comes from, I believe, Terrence McKenna's said 5 grams is the heroic dose, right? His intent wasn't that 5 grams is that's the minimum, I believe, heroic dose, right? So I want to ensure that we look at that, because I don't think 5 grams for me was enough for me.
Right. So I appreciate that. I think that I would really like for you to consider the dosage committee, which I believe is coming up later today.
Okay.
Because
I just saw dosage. I just saw dosage there, and that's one of the things I want to make sure I bring up. So if this isn't the right forum for that,
No.
I understand. Thank you.
No, it's perfect, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's why when you share that, it helps me to kind of get you connected up with the right team that are going to kind of be making those kind of discussions and decisions. So that's a fantastic thing because your voice needs to be on that committee. On this one, what I would love to kind of focus on is the research that might show different dosage, different higher dosage or lower doses and stuff is something that we can then kind of inform that committee with. So thank you for that comment. I appreciate that.
We have two more hands up and then some comments in the chat. I'll go through the hands up first. Dan, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Hello there. So on the dosing, am I understanding this correctly? You guys are only going to focus on psilocybin, and you guys are not going to focus on psilocin, because the active molecule that actually gets you high is not psilocybin; it's psilocin. And out here in Oregon, we have many growers that are growing, and their product is converting into psilocin. And actually, there's an emergency meeting going on in Oregon trying to change the regulation. So I highly recommend you maybe reach out to Oregon.
Thank you for sharing. I believe, and so again, this is belief, so please don't take my word on this, but I believe that the law for New Mexico specifically does not include the synthesis of it. So I believe for that reason, I think that we're focusing on the psilocybin side. So again, that's a belief. Don't run out and say, Dan said this is the way that the law is, but that would be something that the dosing committee more than likely would be looking at.
Jen, we have some more hands raised up, but I'll go through the next speaker and then we'll read the chat. James, your mic has been enabled. Please speak. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Thank you. Just a couple of thoughts on this. With dosage, I really like the idea of milligrams, and I do agree with, like I said before, with psilocybin and psilocin and that conversion. And some of the whole fruit does actually have psilocin in it already. And so when people do take the whole fruit, they will have both. So just thoughts on that. Thoughts on disease states as we approve those ICD-10s. Will this form have different for each disease state? Per se, PTSD has its own. Everybody would have its own form so that we can differentiate that data. So those were a couple thoughts that I had. I like our start, but I would like to also include dosage, the type. So if has been alluded before, if you powderize it like in Oregon, like I was trained, are we doing that? I want to know, are they taking whole fruit by itself? Are they taking the powderized? Are they taking capsulated? Are they taking troches? Are they taking the chocolates? Just a thought on that as well.
Thank you.
That's what I had so far.
I love that. Thank you very much for that recommendation.
And actually, before we go further, I just want to clarify one thing, and I put it into the chat. And this is Dominic for those who are on their phones. But I put it into the chat, and our definition of psilocybin as far as the statute does include the active metabolite psilocin. So when we are talking in general, we don't need to continue saying psilocybin and psilocin. We can just speak about psilocybin for the purposes of how we move forward. So I just wanted to make sure that people actually do understand that. That is one of the definitions within the statute, and that was there for these exact types of reasons. So just from a language standpoint, when we talk about psilocybin, it does include the active metabolite psilocin.
Thank you for the clarification and for any correction if I misspoke on any of that. So thank you.
Yeah, before we go back to the hands, Dan, I would want to read a few things in the chat, if that's okay with you. We have a comment from James. What about including dosage forms? ? Gregory said, I have been working on a very detailed dosage guidance paper and would love some eyes on that. Not all grams are equal. Ian added, the dosage administration and clinical practice committee on January 14th, later today, is the propagation committee. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying, Ian. Thank you.
Yeah. Eric Baca, the grams of dosage being consumed isn't consistent across all species, so dosage would actually be based on actual psilocybin consumed. And then Dominic has a comment in the chat, but just clarify that while speaking. Dan Houston, oh, that is wrong. Please do not go off of psilocybin, very bad. But we address that. Okay, I'll go back to the raised hands. Ian, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Dunn. I am also on the Medical Psilocybin Advisory Board. I wanted to talk because so we already worked on trying to get you guys the ICD-10, at least from the Patient Qualification Committee. In terms of dosage, what I was imagining for that committee was we were going to give dosage ranges. So there was going to be a subperceptual, a mild perceptual, therapeutic, and then high, and not necessarily say you can only take up to X number, instead leave it up to provider specification. So we wouldn't have that Oregon problem, but I definitely do concur with the general sentiment of acknowledging, at least within our testing and laboratory testing and things, the amount of psilocin. If you don't know, psilocin is, so psilocybin is a prodrug of psilocin, which basically just means psilocybin does nothing in your body until it's converted by your body to psilocin, which actually causes the hallucinogenic effects. So what they're saying is sometimes mushrooms have a sparse amount of psilocin in them. Should we be using that chemical as well in terms of measuring our dosage for research purposes, because they are going to have pharmacologically distinct mechanisms?
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate the clarification on that one too. I've made a note of that in here. I think you're muted.
I think
thank you, Dan. Thank you.
I'm going to try to keep this dosage thing as it relates to research and development, because one of the things that we very, very much need globally, but we have access to execute here in relation to dosage, is understanding what is in a gram of any given biomass. As Ian pointed out, psilocin is the active chemical that creates the psychedelic experience. It is not the only chemical in any psilocybin containing mushroom. It is a part of an ecosystem that builds a unique experience. One thing to note, if you have a biomass with high psilocin content in ratio to high psilocybin, your psilocin is active in about 15 to 20 minutes, so that will come on more rapidly, and your psilocybin will continue to process in your gut biome and will extend that trip. So if you have something that's just like all psilocin, it's very unstable. Those mushrooms will not last as long in storage, whereas psilocybin is very, very stable and will last a lot longer in storage. So product shelf life is something that we need to analyze in this, because if we have a production chain that goes harvest, dry, batch test, return COA, off to market, like we need to know that there could be a variance in shelf life based on what the chemical profile is of that specific batch. And every genetic that fruits in an instance is highly unstable. So like you could have your gamma decay that is harvested on 10-1, and the 10-26 harvest is going to be a completely different alkaloid ratio. So we need to be very, very, very clear about what the input dosage is. And then like on the other side of things, like understand what the person's like set and setting, gut biome, mental stability, mood for the day, what their diet, who they talk to in the morning, that sort of thing. All those things can affect your experience. So without getting too deep into that, I think really using this group to understand what's in any given biomass. And also, not to go on too long, Oregon did this whole wood lovers thing. We cannot go down this train of being like, we can't grow mushrooms on wood. Most mushrooms grow on wood. They are designed to to tear down organic matter. Like it's just it's a misconception. We can't get lost in misconceptions of terminology such as wood lovers, whereas wood lovers are an unknown category or clade of psilocybe mushrooms, right? So there are a lot of mushrooms that have a lot of value outside of cubensis, and I want to make sure that we can maintain the ability to work with those lesser known species.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Dan, we have 3 more hands raised. Denali, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Hi again, everyone. I had to step out for a minute, but think I'm following this part of the conversation. I wonder if it might be helpful, given Chair Jennings' scope of what we're hoping to talk about today, is maybe think about this particular issue as one of the very many case studies in this issue that demonstrates, just that we really need to be sure that we have adaptive regulations. I think in terms of actually putting into practice the words of the subcommittee and continuous improvement, I think that one of the best things that we can do is recognize, that these are areas that we are still learning a tremendous amount about, and that the best thing that we can do to ensure that our regulations are responsive to what we know, but also recognize that we don't know everything and need to be able to choose to make changes where necessary, is to build in really a structure for adaptive regulations that incorporate new evidence and really do a good job of ensuring that treatment remains responsive as we continue to develop and understand. That's all I wanted to contribute.
Thank you.
You want to read the chat before we go to the next reader? Hand.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Let me see where we left off there.
I can find it.
Thank you.
There was a comment.
I think it was Eric Baca was the next one.
Yeah, let's see. You're right. Yep. Eric says standardized testing of fruit bodies for psilocybin percentage, calculating the conversion of psilocin in the body is the only true dosage measurement. And Dan Houston, please look at the studies and added a link in there. And then Gregory, sorry for the long-winded ramble. Also, yes to adaptive. There is so much that is truly unknown. Okay. Next, we have Desba. Please, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself.
Hi. So I was just trying to see if I can kind of synthesize what I've been hearing so far, just for the sake of like putting a pin in this. I think this is a good point and a moment, Dan, that we can kind of, for the sake of anyone who's following where we're trying to go with the norms and understanding this committee, is that there's just like this huge river of information that we're trying to figure out, and I'm seeing this is where we're having these tributaries where the research that I believe the starting out point is the language that Denali's pointing out, where the adaptive flexibility, this is where we're standing at now, this is where we're going to look out towards the future of our understanding. And in that scope is where, to Greg's point, we are looking at how the psilocybin is converted and also has the psilocin involved in that mushroom, which then would eventually lead to the dosage, which is what he's talking about, what that looks like in terms of administering, facilitating to the set and setting of what we're trying to create, long down into the future. But for anyone that might be seeing where the research part of that goes into, this is the beginning part of looking into these different tributaries of these different committees, where those are going to start kind of flowing into all of these different territories down into the scope of what the advisory board is going to start providing, the regulations and the framework and the structure. So this is, thank you, Dan, for facilitating this conversation of, getting started of where we're at, where we're sliding this information into these different committees, and what that would look like for the future.
Beautifully said. Thank you very much, Ezra.
James, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Thank you again, and I'll keep this one simple. The word entourage comes to mind here. There's a lot more things in biomass than just the psilocybin. Things like biocysteine, other things that are actually in that whole fruit are going to be down the line again important, but not currently. I don't think we break down the biomass that extensively. I think we law and we stick to that psilocybin mostly terms, and we also keep that in mind of psilocin and the 3 phases of action that I want to remind everybody of. That onset, very quick, the duration that's in that middle, how long is it going to last for based off your dose? It does matter. And also what that genome is. So if you're taking different, genomes, they do matter. But I think really we focus back on this group on certificate of analysis. I want to bring that up. So we make sure that, are we saying milligrams, which I'm highly for, but in that certificate analysis that's where it's going to be important to say, and the guy from Oregon, I think it's James, is there a way you could share a certificate of analysis with us? And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, and this, as we're working on this is the data element, and so we can look at different data elements that we could add in the data collection and how we define those things. So that's perfectly fine. And I love all the research that everybody's bringing up. I really would, as part of the homework activities, I really encourage everybody that has specific research information about what you brought up during this kind of phase here, please share it with that email address, the Medical Psilocybin email address, and that would be fantastic. Please, if you're doing that, make sure that it's coming into the RACI committee so that we can bring that in, and that way we can talk about that at next meetings, because this is exactly like I said, Deborah said it perfectly. This is the whole way. What we're trying to do is get something kind of started and then have this in such a way that these teams, these committees, this advisory board that we have continues to look at new information, new research, and adapt and grow into that. So absolutely, this is kind of like what I'm doing today is day 0 as a start to kind of gather things, and then all of the things that everybody's bringing up very valid to look at. But let's make sure that if you have the research behind that, please share that so that we can add that in, and just let me know a little bit about it so that when I bring that into our research kind of list, that would be fantastic. I'll take another beat here if there's some more comments that came in the chat. I think Greg Evans has, I have a whole database of analytics for multiple chemists. Happy to share my research. Great. Send it to the Medical Psilocybin address that's on the screen. And as I said, for the sake of small clarification and where this information flows into propagation, which is next meeting today. Yes, this is kind of what we're doing. These are teasers. This is so that if you're like, hey, I got to come to the next meeting, this is exactly right. Cultivation would be a wonderful meeting to go to. Propagation, cultivation, and then also dosing. So these meetings that Ian brought up also, these are the ones, please come to those and kind of share that information. Dan Houston says that there is an Oregon psilocybin report. Email if you want to see it. Make sure, Dan, if you're sharing it to the Medical Psilocybin link. Oh, and thank you, Dominic, for sharing the next meetings there. Again, these are all of our meetings are kind of teasers again for the next meetings. So these are good if you're having like specific information you'd like to share or questions that you might want to raise. These are the meetings to also come to too. So get your voice out there and bring that up with us. So thank you. And if we might jump back into the slide deck. I only have a couple of more slides to hit to kind of show, and I think that the next one would be the adverse event reporting ones right there. Thank you, Dominic, for sharing that one. Again, just a starting point, these will be something that we can talk about, add, make changes to as well. But on adverse effect reporting, we would look at the session identifier linked to that session, what the category was it physiological, was it psychological, was it a behavioral? So again, to differentiate between different things, the event description is a narrative, the severity, and I use the recommendation to use the CTCA AE recommendations as a way to say these are the different types of adverse effects that could happen, and then the rating scale across that on the severity. The intervention that was utilized in that adverse event, and then that way we could look at, was this a verbal de-escalation or did it require EMS transport? If there is a suicidality that we need to look at, utilizing again another type of a self-reported scale or clinician-reported scale, and then the duration of that adverse event. So was it transient or was it something that was persistent? And so adverse effects can take place at any point along the way of the dosage. So it could be all the way from the actual dosage to even after effects, after the patient would leave the setting. If this was done at home, the same thing. So just wanted to kind of bring those ideas up. And then the last slide for this will be the clinical outcomes, which is the follow-up. Integration and follow-up being critical for this. And so again, patient identifier linked back to demographics, the date of integration, the setting type of where that integration took place, and then other as appropriate baseline or measurements that would go track back to baseline. So for example, if a MATTRS or a PHQ was used for depression, or a PTSD score, or a GAD, for example, for general anxiety. And like I mentioned, the substance abuse, the timeline follow back, or an audit if it was for alcohol. So these kind of things would be a way that we could build into the system a way to see, is the treatment being effective as we're doing this research as well. So this is like I said, a very, very, very rudimentary and very drafty idea for data collection, but I felt it incumbent upon myself to show something, at least to bring to you group as a committee, in order to just start with something. And then that way, at least we can talk about it, we can add to it, we can say, why is this on here? This shouldn't be on here, or those kind of things. So again, I wanted to bring that to y'all. And if there's discussion still to have for these last few slides, please, I would love to hear it, just as you've done before. Again, if it's thoughts afterwards, you can always email. And then if you're like, hey, I need to go back and really review this, they'll be back up on the medical psilocybin page at the DOH in 5 to 10 days or so after this meeting. So that way you can bring this down and take a look at it more. Again, all these are drafts. So anybody, okay, Gregory, thank you very much. Afterglow is a phenomenon, this is in the chat, that I believe can be directly tied to several non-active compounds which potentiate neural health. Needs research, absolutely. Any other thoughts, comments, things that you want to, slings and arrows and barbs at me or anything like that? I'll give again a little bit. Great. Thank you very much, James. I see that you've got your hand raised. Thank you.
James, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Thank you. I'm interested, I was looking through SB 219 and there's no language surrounding the questionnaire asking of other psychoactive substances or other medications used prior to the dosing session. And I think when dealing with polypharmacological interactions, it's imperative as a safety parameter to investigate whether or not additional psychoactive substances were used prior to the dosing as a part of like an adverse event reporting. So we can say and pinpoint, was it the actual medical psilocybin that causes potential adverse event, or was it the I don't want just a fantastical example. Somebody takes a shot of Jack Daniels prior and then goes into the session. Not saying that that will happen, but I think it's imperative that we document other types of substances. So thank you.
Thank you, James. And just to kind of add on to that, what I had put in for the clinical baselines and history, which was slide 2 from that, was concomitant meds. And so things like that might be other medications that might be effect. But you're exactly right. That's on the demographic side. So that would be tied at the top level. But you're exactly right. This would change from session to session potentiality. So thanks for bringing that up. I like that comment. So thank you very much. And Shane, I think, has his hand up. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. First, just real quick, Dominic, I sent you an email regarding my inability to put anything in the chat. I also want to talk about the adverse effects thing here. We need to be really careful when we're saying adverse effects, because in my experience as an integration coach, some people have a traumatic experience come up during their journey, but they receive healing for that traumatic experience. So calling that an adverse reaction by that they came up, that they had I don't want to use bad trip, but that they had a traumatic thing come up during their journey, but that they were healed of that. I wouldn't classify that as an adverse effect.
Thank you.
Right. So I just want people to be careful of that, because like I'm meeting with a veterans group later this week, and he expressed that thing. He's like, yeah, I've heard a lot of people have really bad trips or really bad traumatic things happen to them. I'm like, yeah, but did they receive healing for that? So if they receive the healing, then don't call that a adverse reaction, right? So I just, when we're talking about adverse reactions, I just want people to be very clear about that.
I appreciate that, Shane, and that's good, because the verbiage is going to be important. I would love recommendations to change, because instead of calling adverse effects reporting, because on that data collection, I imagined a way to put kind of what the category was, the severity, and an intervention, and what was done about that. So you're exactly right. If there was something, as you said, that came up that could have been taken care of through healing, that would have been the intervention, description, information about that. But you're right, maybe the terminology adverse effect is not the right terminology to use. So I would love to, like I said, let's, something to kind of consider, to talk about, and to say like what kind of, words are important, what kind of words would make more sense instead of adverse effect. So challenging. Thank you, Despa, as one.
And we have some comments in the chat from James. Can we add the polysubstance/polypharmacy section of the ADE form? Gregory says, to what Shane is saying, I think the perception of data and misunderstanding of the terms is hugely important. Difficult and challenging are very different concepts. And from Desva, challenging in quotation mark is what I would, quotation marks is what I would use. James added adverse experiences reaction form question mark. And Gregory, challenging is a term that offers a path towards growth. Was the final comment.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate that, because that's exactly what I was hoping that we could kind of come from this. And so thanks for kind of sharing these kind of things. Again, that's what I said. Where's my blind spots? Where are things at? And so I want to kind of respect exactly what the committee is thinking about. So thank you. I appreciate that. And I see Brenda has her hand up.
Brenda, your mic's been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak. Brenda, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Brenda, if
Okay, there we go. It wasn't working. My chat's not working either. Thank you, Dan, for having all of this information. This is really important. I've worked in many rehabs, and prior to having anybody come in and sign paperwork and all that, having UAs before administering any other medications is really important. And so I think having that prior to administering any psilocybin or psilocin, that would be one of the things that would be part of all of this. So I think when we were getting into like when people are having these challenging issues during their journey, I think that's a really important part, is making sure that people are having a medical doctor there to make sure that they're able to take the medicine.
Thank you. I believe
there's one comment in the chat. Yep. James says, I agree, being a veteran myself. Wording does matter to a lot of vet community.
Exactly.
We have hands up. We have one hand up. Ben, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Yeah, Dan, thank you for the conversation. I'm curious about the data collection and how that extends to preparation and what the duration is and follow-up after the fact. From a medical standpoint, I know that cost and billable hours and reimbursable are all issues. And my experience in more indigenous practices is that the preparation and then the time after is as much the ceremony as anything else. And often it's the reminder that life itself is the ceremony. So I wonder how that really works together, whether it's follow up for a challenging event, because sometimes you don't get the answer in that experience itself. Sometimes that comes after the fact, and how you really bring that into your life, how you bring that into practice. So I wonder how those two worlds can merge, and same in preparation. When you learn about people's lifestyles, whether they're chronic pot smokers or alcoholics, as well as what the concomitant drugs that they're on, all of those play a piece, yeah, as well as the mindset and the preparation and going into those experiences. I think it's important to collect data on that and to have both the preparation and setting of intention and some of these more subtle things. How do you weave that into the scientific, as well as then what's often called just integration? And I feel like integration can be a little dismissive. Often it's a one-time conversation and we got our facts, or, how are there support teams to really walk with people and bring these changes and this into our communities and back into our homes and back into our lives?
Thank you, Ben, for those comments. I appreciate that. That's very good to consider too. Thank you.
Gregory has a comment in the chat. I think there is a strong case for access to specific dosages without a doctor present. But that is for another committee.
Yes, thank you.
One more comment from Desba. For the sake of the meeting, proposing the board and future marketing / education, I'm visual. I think a color-coded flow chart would be great to see how research is involved in each step of this process and the committees and feedbacks into the dynamic of the whole, especially from when we tend to go into the weeds on certain tributaries.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the idea that I have kind of on this is that because there are all the other committees that makes up this board, is that if I could utilize this committee as a way to kind of share these kind of research tools can inform those committees and the work that they do. And you're exactly right. It may not be a specific, flow chart in one direction or the other, but that's exactly what my intentionality is on this. Yes, It is homework. That's part of my job too. So my job is to try to like bring in as much from what y'all have in comments and suggestions and ideas, and then weave that together, bring that back to y'all so that we can then say, this is now what we've talked about from before. Here's the updates and changes to the best that I have. And then we can then say, great, now let's put this to a vote or a discussion and such. So absolutely. Thank you. James says in the chat with integration section, what including as section on types of integration, virtual, in-person, or other. So for example, in the data elements that I had kind of just proposed about the clinical outcome was that information, but it was part of the session. So you're exactly right. I don't have anything in there about where that clinical outcome, the follow-up, the integration took place. Actually, no, it does. Setting type. I apologize. I'm looking at it now. So on that page, yes, thank you very much. It was the, keep going back forward. Oh, went up. Whoa. Dominic's got the scroll going on. So if you, Dominic, if you go to the very last slide of the deck and then back up one. There you go. So you're exactly right, James. I tried to include something in there about what the setting type had looked like. Was it clinic, home, retreat center, virtual, something like that. So, okay. And so I would love to kind of hit the last phase. So Dominic, if you wouldn't mind going to the very last slide, which is future discussions. And so what I have been thinking about, other things that we could work with on this committee. So I think the first ones that I would like to really try to focus on is some of that, continuing gathering the research that y'all can share with me, and I'll continue to update and add that and to make it in a much better looking format as Desva has recommended, because it needs to be something that can be utilized by the advisory board and the committees and such, and everybody else can see that in easy form. But some of the other things in the data, but the other things that I had looked at was if we would need to consider ideas for go, no-go checklists. I do a lot of rocket launches with high school students, and so I do mission control. And so one of the things that we have is kind of like we call it a FRR, flight readiness review. And so these are things to say, yep, these are all in place. And if all these things are in place, then we're a go. We can actually launch. And so I'm curious if the committee might be interested in talking about a go, no-go checklist for lots of different reasons. One would be for just the program in general. Like, these are the things that the committees must have in order to say that we can move forward with this. So it's just a good way for us to kind of, as the rest of the board, kind of think about what everybody wants to make sure that is in place. And these are the things that must be in place to ensure that we're doing things safely and correctly. So this is a future discussion, but I just want people to kind of think about that. Other is outcome monitoring and reporting. So how would we actually do good outcome monitoring and reporting? What does emergency preparedness and response look like? And how do we, of course, provide training, information out to the field for that emergency response? Again, part of our responsibility of this committee is patient and community education. And I do mean that from a community standpoint, because we want to make sure that this is messaged correctly, received well, those kind of things. So this is something, and these are, again, going back to the homework, this is one of the big things. And then, of course, research and evaluation practices. So as was asked earlier, would this committee be informing some of that research and evaluation practices? My hope is yes. Those are some of the things that this committee could work on and to propose that we could bring to the board as a whole. And so those are just, like I said, some of the things I would like to keep everybody thinking about as we move forward. And then I'll just need, if you're like, that's exactly what we need to do, then you probably will know. I'll probably say, great. I know somebody who's going to have some homework, because I would love it for somebody who takes that passion, that interest in that, to be able to provide some of that info back to this committee to kind of share, and so that we can just detect. Because I'm not going to be doing all of it, all of the work and all the talking. I just wanted to kind of get this first one launched, and so that we could kind of set the flow, the tone, the norms and such. And so before I take another break, I see that Gray Evans is throwing one. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Dan. Gregory says, throwing one other high-level considerations. How or what guidance can we provide to the regulatory process for analytics and reporting? Question mark.
Exactly. And that's kind of what the data system that I have kind of showed is kind of where I wanted to kind of go with that one. So that's the analytics and reporting side that I'm hoping that we can provide recommendations to the board and then subsequently to the program. So, and so at this point, that's kind of where I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about what I'm hopeful for and some of the things that I've done in my homework so that I could share with you all to get us launched and started. And so we still have about 30 minutes left of this. So I wanted to give plenty of time for me shutting up and then letting public comment take place at this time. So this time is your time. And so what I would love is, like I said, we have 30 minutes until the end. So when we do hit 11, the meeting will end. But I would love if you have comments that you would like to share, a general note, anything that you would like to talk about. And I won't be probably responding to most of them because I may not be able to respond to every one of those kind of things. But this will just be a great way to kind of share and talk. And I'll take notes as we go if it's something pertaining to this committee. But I would appreciate if you would be able to have your comments to a 3-minute timeline so that we could hear from everybody if there would be somebody that wants to share something. So I would just, again, just as we've done before, use the hand raise feature there on your toolbar in order to get in the queue. And then we'll go ahead and unmute your microphone as you come up in the queue. So thank you. And I appreciate, number one, if you do have to jump off at this time because you don't have a comment to say, I do, number one, thank you so much for your time today, because I know that it's hard to take time out of your day, and especially on Fridays. So thank you for being here with me. I hope it was worth your time. I hope you could see the vision that we do have for this committee. I hope that the work that we do will be beneficial. I hope that I can be a good chair for you for this and to bring your voices to the board as a whole. And I need you to kind of hold me to that. So please kind of keep me to that. And I don't want to say don't be afraid to challenge me, but do it in a kind way. But challenge me on the things that you're thinking that I'm not bringing your voice to be heard on. And so I'll make sure that the committee as a whole gets to hear it, and then they get to decide as well. So if I'm falling down on that, please let me know. And keep an eye out for our next meeting that we'll have, and then we'll start to get onto our regular schedule. So I appreciate that. That's what I wanted to say. And so now I'll open it up for the public comments for everybody. Thank you.
There's one hand, Dan. Shane, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Yeah, so we've done a little bit of discussion about integration, and as I said earlier, I'm an integration coach. Is there a forum in this group where they're going to be discussing integration specifically? Right, so we've got dosage, we've got end of life, we've got a bunch of that other, but I don't see one that seems to be the right place to talk about integration and what the board is going to recommend or require, or just anything around integration. And the second thing is, Dan, can you put a way to contact you directly in the chat, or if you don't mind, so that if we have questions or something specifically for you, that we can reach out to you?
Sure, thank you for that. And I'll go ahead and put that, thank you very much, on that email address. There is my email address. And so you can simply send it and just say, get this over to Dan. And that way, because again, this is a public forum. And so even those kind of requests and everything get tracked and logged, because this is an open and transparent process. So please use that email address. That would be fantastic. They will get it to me, and then I get to respond back to you, and it will still continue to copy to the Medical Psilocybin link, so that way it's all tracked and logged. So thank you very much for that.
Okay. And then, like I said, about the integration, is there some forum that's going to be specific to that?
Dan, I think I can answer that, and Ian is also on the call. So if he has a disagreement or a different place for it, but to me, the integration aspect would go in with dosage administration and clinical practice, because that would be a part of the protocols and the process for the overall treatment.
Okay, we have another hand up. Gregory, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Just me rambling again. I actually wanted to hear Dan Housen ramble. I have a very specific question that ties into a little seed I want to plant in the research community. Dan, if you're still on, have you done any?
Yeah, Greg, Dan actually had said that he had to drop off. That was earlier at about 10 o'clock. So, but if you want to, if you want to send your question to us at the Medical Psilocybin email, we will forward it to him.
I will definitely, like, I'm writing a big old analytics research summary of what I'm doing so that you can just kind of have that. But what I'm sorry to cut you off, Dominic.
Not a problem. I was just saying that we'll get your question to him. So.
Oh, he'll hear from me. Mostly like, so Dan is in Oregon. There's another guy in Oregon that I think would be really valuable in this conversation. His name is Jordan Jacobs. In Colorado, there's a gentleman by the name of Ian Bollinger, who I would love to bring into this conversation. He, if nobody knows who he is one of the advisors for God damn, I'm not even remembering the name of the company, but they run the Psychedelic Cup in Denver. But he kind of like designed all the analytics around that. But specifically what we're not looking for that I think we should be looking for in diverse species is beta carbolines. Beta carbolines are, hello pharmacologists who wants to chime in. Chemicals that work as MAOI inhibitors, specifically like harmine and harmaline, where there are reports of harmines being found in psilocybin containing mushroom biomass. When you have something like that naturally occurring in a single species, you're going to have a potentiated, like a massively potentiated experience. Like if I take a cubensis at 1 gram and I take Banisteriopsis caapi or Syrian rue as like a MAOI potentiator, you're turning your 1 gram experience into a 3 to 4 gram level experience perceptually. So like if we're serving mushrooms and we're just, oh, this has a gram of psilocin equivalent, and it doesn't really take into account unmeasured compounds, I think we're doing ourselves a big old chaotic disservice. But that's like how we've been doing it, like here's 5 grams of mushrooms. Thanks, Terrence. And then like, we have people like Paul Stamets that published paper from a reputable university that says a microdose is 250 milligrams of something. But what is it? Anyways, I'd love to hear from more of the pharmacologists around those types of effects and get more research up.
And anybody else have their hands up? I don't see anybody else's. So if you would like to get in the queue, make sure you raise your hand, please.
James, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Thank you. To kind of piggyback on James Brown's earlier comment in regards to being looking into the research, obviously we know science is always changing and we need to be very mindful of it as we develop and look at new emerging papers. Just because something is published does not mean it's correct. And so I think it's really important for us to be flexible as a community, accept what the data has to say, and then look at the reproducibility factor. And with that being said, another quick point that I'd like to suggest, and we didn't really talk about it much, is as a harm reduction standpoint, I think it's really important to really focus on the de-identifier factors with our medical psilocybin patients. It's really important that we abide by HIPAA and make sure that those who are receiving these medicines are protected anonymous, so that potentially if they are an employee or within a organization that doesn't necessarily agree with medical psilocybin, that they're protected. And I think that's very important. So thank you for lending an ear, and I'm really excited about this committee.
Dan, I'm going to read a few comments in the chat. From Eric, great meeting. I like where this is beginning. Gregor says, you are amazing, Dan. Denali wrote, he also dropped his email in the chat, and that's for dan@rosecitylabs.com. And then Eric says, I think what we are really talking about here is DMT, just saying. Go back to the hands that are raised. We have James Brown, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Thank you again, and this will be my last time for today, so I could keep talking, I'm sure. One thing I was going to bring up to my idea on this too was with the committee, who's going to be in charge of, besides the Department of Health, of course, fielding those complaints? Something to think about. When the Department of Health gets a complaint, what I would like to see is root cause analysis, like SBAR, we call it in medical terms, right? What are we going to do with that? And then can we committee members be part of that type of root cause analysis, correction, or SBAR with the Department of Health, of course, to offer more suggestions and, of course, corrections and just best practices and what we can get back to reduce the harm, if any is caused at all. And to, again, point back to the literature. These are very, very amazing medicines that are going to come up to the Mexicans. A lot of education needs to come out to the general public who's not aware of these things. I work in an area where we see a lot of these things when they first hit the communities. A lot of uneducated things can happen. A lot of uncircumstantial outcomes can happen. And we don't want those. And so we want to kind of focus on how do we get ahead of that. So I want to see proactivity on how we can see us get ahead of fielding these type of things and getting out our education to the communities, as well as the providers who are very excited. But the community is going to come out and say, what is this? And we need to be ready. And so what are we going to have? Is there also something that we can produce and start thinking about as far as resources for those communities? And thank you so much. I'll end it with that.
Denali, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Thank you so much, Chair Jennings and everyone, for the conversation today and starting so much good work of this committee. I'm kind of curious because I'm still trying to wrap my head around the scope of the committee and how it'll interact with others, since continual improvement, a lot of the mission, I think, of this committee will be put to work once we have baseline regulations and we have a program. I think there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that our regulations allow for that. As I was talking earlier about flexible, adaptive, lean regulations are going to be the best way that we can then make changes that are necessary. But I'm kind of curious if it might fit within the scope of this committee, since related more to the research end than the continuous improvement, to be kind of a holding place for research needs that emerge in other committees. I mean, just in the early meetings that we've had, there are a couple of things that have been identified by committees, and it may be that within the membership of that committee, there's enough resources to do the homework, as we were talking about a few times during this meeting, of those issues. But maybe that's something that fits within the role of this committee as a way to support the other committees and do a deeper dive on issues that are identified when they are. That is my only contribution. Thank you so much.
Yesva, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself to speak.
Hi, yeah. Yeah, Denali, and I think that was kind of where I was going with the flow chart. I'm seeing where all of these, and the comment that I was trying to integrate with your flexibility and adaptive earlier was just, I'm seeing this flow of all this information and where does it kind of start migrating into these other tributaries of the different committees. And that was what was the suggestion, to put a more visual cue as to where does the research flow back into the committee and where does it go and how does it look in terms of, for me specifically, but I'm sure everyone else, how does that research then inform feedback into the committees? And I think that that last commenter made a good point about, where is when the fallout and or improvement, for our own challenging experience as a committee. I'm not a committee, as a board and regulations, where does that information go? Where the trees, to use the river analogy, where the trees get caught and everything else, how do we clean it up and how do we maintain the flow of this medicine to the rest of the state?
There's one comment in chat from Gregory. Excuse me, +1 on that cross committee dependency tracking.
Thank you very much. And I don't see any other hands raised, but I do want to kind of let that kind of settle, because I do appreciate those comments, especially Denali and as well on that. I think that's a very good way, and Desmond's analogy to make that kind of put that in the story mode makes a lot of sense. I love the idea that if other committees may, have like, here are some research that we've used, that we could be the repository of that. And consequently, if there are things that the committees are needing in the research categories that may not exist, or they don't have access to that, or we could bring it to this committee. And there could be the experts in this committee that could say, great, here's the research that you need to look at and to help us understand and to implement some of those things. So I love that fact. I never even considered that. So I appreciate that. And I would love to be able to have a good two-way flow back from committee to committee, and especially to support those committees. This committee to me always felt like a very good support role, and to be the ones that can help ensure that all the work that the other committees are doing is backed up and supported and assisted. So I love those thoughts that y'all brought up. So, but again, we still have until 11 scheduled. But we'll be here if you have any questions or comments. But if there are none, then I would love for us to be able to, you can log off at any time. So,
and Dan, before people start logging on off, is if we could set what exactly for the next date. I know it was suggested earlier 2 weeks, but that is up to you and the group here. But I just want to make sure that we have that confirmed prior to the meeting ending. So
yeah. I would, if on y'all's schedule, because again, I defer also to the rest of the committees and the board, because I don't see anything on the calendar on my side, but I might not see everything. But if the 23rd at the same time is available, I would like to continue having this kind of cadence moving forward, if that's possible.
So what I would just suggest is, if there's anybody who has an objection for the meeting continuing and being on Friday the 23rd starting at 9 o'clock, go ahead and say it now. Otherwise, we'll take that as a consensus and move forward. And we do realize, just so everybody does know, that not everybody can always make every meeting. We do understand that there'll be occasional times where individuals cannot. But we try to do the best to do that. But I think having a regular cadence is good, and And so we do have that space available. So I'm not seeing any negatives. I did see a bunch of thumbs up. So unless you have an objection, Dan, we will schedule those. Just so everybody knows, one of the things that we are doing from the department standpoint is so that we're not flooding people with lots and lots of emails, is we are batching all of the meetings and the links similar to what we did for the first one, and we'll be sending those out in batches on a regular basis. And so we just have a couple more going on right now, and then we will do that. But for those people who are here, you can pencil in on your calendar that we'll schedule this meeting, the next one, for Friday the 23rd at 9 a.m.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate you doing that.
Dan, there are a couple of comments in the chat I want to read for you. Let's see, we have one from Gregory. Dan Jennings, is there anything not covered that you would like to see from us prepared prior to the next meeting? And from James, one of the areas of research in the future will be the review of literature on additional health indications for the use of psilocybin.
Thank you. And to answer that last question there, so the last things I would like for you to be able to do, again, we've talked about a data collection system, and we've talked about the potential of the research that I gathered, but it's of course just what I've gathered. So a couple of homework activities would be continue sending to the Medical Psilocybin email address any research studies that you would like to be considered to add it to the list. What I'll be doing is bring that up. We'll have a certain time frame during our meetings to bring up, here are the recommendations, and then again we'll let the committee then look at those recommendations and then come back with comments and suggestions back from those before we add them onto the list. Again, the list that I provided, you'll be able to see this entire slide deck when it gets posted up to the DOH site. So please do review that so you can see what I've collected in the data elements. So the homework really would be that. If there's anything in the data elements that you're interested in commenting on. And then subsequently, other activities, as I said, in future, discussions and thoughts would be those kind of things that Tommy just had up on the slide there, our responsibilities. So that's kind of our area of what we're working on. So if there's something that's in there that you're like, I would really like to dig into that, then that would be something also to either share at the email address to say, I would like to take a part of this. Here's some information on that. Here's what we could do. And then, or bring that up at our next meeting, because I'll have some time at the beginning where we'll be able to say, is there anything that we need to work on that somebody would like to take on? Because we'll have a lot of, we need to work on this, but we'll now start to move into we need to work on this, and I'm willing to work on this will be the next thing. So that's kind of the homework for this committee. So when we meet in 2 weeks, that's kind of be our kind of beats that we'll have at that time. So I hope that helps. There you go. Thank you, Dominic, for putting in the chat. So the Medical Psilocybin and put RACI, so our new official acronym for this committee, and that way it'll get directed to the right place. It'll make it easier for everybody up there. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I'm going to be flooding y'all's inbox up there.
That's perfectly fine. We're used to that. So yeah.
Great. Well, again, thank you all very much for being here. I, again, cannot thank you enough. I'm humbled for having y'all here with me today, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks for our next meeting. And bring your friends. Bring your friends. Let's make this a big party then next Friday, or next 2 Fridays from now. So thank y'all.
Great. Well, and we'll go ahead at this point. We'll close the meeting. So thank you everybody for attending, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Dan, if you want to hold for a moment.
Got it.